There is an island in the middle of the South Atlantic that has a school, a hospital, a police station, a supermarket, a 19th century church, a golf course with no grass on it, and a council that its residents elect every 3 years. About 800 people live there at any one time. They have addresses. They have neighbors they have known for 20 years. Some of them were born there. None of them is allowed to stay. There is no right of abode on this island. Nobody can buy land on it or own a house on it. Living there depends entirely on holding a contract of employment or on being the partner or child of someone who does, and when the last contract ends, that person leaves. That applies as much to someone who has worked there for 30 years as to someone who arrived last month. A child born on the island is not from the island. School runs to the age of 16, and then the child leaves because there is no sixth form, no university, and no legal ground on which to remain. The island is called Ascension. It is a volcano, roughly 88 square kilometers of it, sitting on its own about 1,600 kilometers from the coast of Africa and more than 2,000 from Brazil. And it has never, in its history, had a native population, not a displaced one, not a diminished one. There has simply never been anybody from here. So the question is not how anyone survives out there. Ships have managed it for 500 years. The question is what a life looks like. The mornings, the meals, the funerals, the arguments at council meetings, in a place that has decided in advance that no one belongs to it. Approaching by air, the first thing that resolves out of the ocean is black, not grey, not brown. Black in overlapping tongues and folds, with the rust-red cinder cones standing up out of it like slag heaps. There are around 40 of these cones, scattered across an island half an hour wide by road. The youngest lava flows are thought to be only a few hundred years old, though the dating is imprecise, and geologists give a range rather than a date. The soil, where anything can be called soil, is mostly clinker, the sharp, hollow rubble a lava flow leaves behind when it cools, with gas still trapped inside it. Ascension sits about 100 kilometers west of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, near the seam where the ocean floor is pulling itself apart. What breaks the surface is only the top of the mountain. The rest of it, another 3 kilometers, is underwater. It lies 8 degrees south of the equator, well inside the tropics. Its climate is classified as hot desert. Georgetown, on the northwestern shore, averages about 173 millimeters of rain in a year, less than Baghdad. Rain arrives in short, heavy bursts, mostly between June and September, and then does not arrive again. There is no river on the island, no lake, no stream, no natural pond, nothing that holds water in the open. The water people drink is made. 2 reverse osmosis plants pull seawater through membranes and produce somewhere around 120 cubic meters a day, which is the entire freshwater supply for the entire population and everything else that needs water. The gardens, the vehicles, the hospital comes out of that same figure. There is one small natural seep at the foot of the mountain, in a glade of shade, known as Dampier's Drip. It is named after a shipwrecked captain whose 60 men survived 2 months here, in 1701, and it produces almost nothing. The largest native land animal is a crab. It is called Jongarthia lagostoma. It is orange or yellow or purple depending on the individual. It lives up on the mountain, and once a year it walks down to the sea to release its young into the surf and then walks back up. Drivers stop for them. There is nothing larger that belongs here. There never was. Drive inland and up, and somewhere around 300 meters, the black begins to take on a fuzz of grey-green. By 500 meters, there is grass. By 700, there is mist. And then there is bamboo, and then there are bananas, wild ginger, guava, blackberry, and a stand of Norfolk pines that were planted to be cut down one day as replacement masts for sailing ships and never were. At the summit, 859 meters up, there is a small body of open fresh water sheltered by tall bamboo. It is called the Dew Pond. It is the only one on the island, and it is man-made. So is the forest around it. When Charles Darwin came ashore in 1836, he described the place as an island of cinders with barely anything on it. 7 years later, the botanist Joseph Hooker stopped here on the way back from the Antarctic, and the Admiralty asked him what could be done. His answer was that planting the high ground would let trees comb moisture out of the passing cloud, hold it, and build soil where there was none. From the late 1840s, the Royal Navy began shipping plants down from Kew Gardens in London. Hundreds of species, over decades, from South Africa, Argentina, Australia, Europe. They were carried up the mountain and put in the ground. It worked. The upper slopes now hold cloud the way Hooker said they would, and a walk near the summit is a walk through a dripping, closed canopy forest of species that between them have no shared home anywhere on Earth. Ecologists argue about what to call this. Some describe it as the world's oldest deliberate terraforming experiment. Others point out that nobody designed the outcome, that the species simply fitted themselves together, and that the whole thing is better understood as a very large accident that happened to hold. Neither reading has settled it. What is not contested is the cost. The endemic plants, the ferns and grasses that had been here before anyone, were pushed into the last unshaded corners. One of them, the Ascension Island parsley fern, was believed extinct until 2010, when 4 plants were found alive on a cliff and cuttings were taken, and the introductions did not stop with Hooker. In 1966, engineers building a radio station planted a Central American thorn tree, Mexican thorn, to stop the dust blowing across their site. It got out. By 2016, there were an estimated 38,000 of them. Their taproots go down as far as 30 meters. They thrive on bare lava, and they have begun closing in on the beaches where the turtles come ashore. Removing them is now a permanent line in the island's budget. Georgetown is a strip of low buildings between the Black Rock and a very blue sea. Around 450 people live there. There is a pier, a fort on the hill, above, with its guns still pointing at nothing. A barracks, a church, a post office, a shop, and a bar. Everything is within a few minutes' walk of everything else. The other settlement is 2 boats, 400 meters up the mountain road, where the air is cooler and the cloud sits some afternoons. It was built in the 1960s for the engineers who came to put up the radio station, and it has the swimming pool, the club, and the school. Two-boat school takes every child on the island, from 4 years old to 16, in one building. Some year groups have 3 children in them. The people are mostly St. Helenians. Saints, everybody says, from the island 1,300 kilometers to the southeast, plus British and American staff, and a scattering of other nationalities. Contracts here are unusual in what they include. An employer is obliged to provide accommodation, medical cover, food or a food allowance, and travel. So a household's wages are close to being disposable in a way they would not be anywhere else, and a great deal of that money goes home to St. Helena, where it holds up families that have never seen Ascension. The currency is the St. Helena pound, worth exactly £1 sterling, and the American base takes dollars. Mornings begin early because the heat arrives early. The commute is measured in minutes. The shop stock depends on when the ship last came, so people learn to read a shelf as a calendar. When the fresh produce thins out, the next vessel is still a way off. Fishing is not a hobby so much as a normal use of an evening. The water drops off very quickly. Here and there are wahoo and tuna within sight of the shore. The golf course is laid out across the lava, and the greens are not green. They are rolled volcanic dust, and players carry a strip of mat to hit off. It is regularly described as the worst course in the world, and the club is not defensive about this. From November to May, green turtles haul up onto the beaches at night. Long Beach, the strip of sand immediately below Georgetown, is the busiest of them. Nesting on the island has risen roughly 500% since records began in the 1970s, and something in the order of 24,000 nests are now laid each season. The consequence for people living 20 meters away is a beach that has been plowed overnight. Deep tractor-wide trenches from the waterline to the top of the sand and back, made in the dark by animals that swam here from Brazil. And there is the noise. Sooty terns nest on the open lava on the southwest side of the island in a colony of roughly 250,000 pairs. Sailors named them wide-awake birds because they call all night and do not stop. The airfield is named after them. Here, and as far as anyone has recorded, only here, they do not breed once a year. They breed every 9.5 months, which means the colony arrives, screams, raises its young, and vanishes on a cycle that walks slowly backwards through the calendar. A birthday that fell in silence 1 year falls inside the fair 3 years later. Nobody lives here for the fishing. The island has jobs because of where it is, and where it is has been useful to somebody in every decade since the invention of the telegraph. Undersea cables were landed here in 1899, and the island became a relay point between Britain, Africa, and South America. In 1942, the Americans arrived and cut a runway across the lava plain in a matter of months, which gave Allied aircraft a stepping stone across the South Atlantic. In 1966, the BBC put up a shortwave relay station. In 1967, NASA installed a tracking station. Today, the island carries a ground antenna for the Global Positioning System, a European Space Agency facility that watches rockets in the minutes after they leave French Guiana, an American telescope that tracks orbital debris a Royal Air Force station at Travelers Hill, and a United States base at Cat Hill. The runway is the island's single point of failure. It began breaking up, and in 2017 it closed to almost everything. For years, the only reliable way in and out was by sea, and for the people here that meant no visitors, delayed medical transfers, and freight arriving when it arrived. Repairs ran into the 2020s, and flights returned in stages. A monthly charter now links the island to St. Helena and onward to Johannesburg. Everything else comes by ship. Fuel arrives roughly every 2 months on a chartered tanker that anchors offshore and pumps it in through a floating hose to a depot at the pier head. There is no harbour. There never has been one. The coast is rock and swell, and cargo is worked from a ship at anchor. The exports are small and strange. Postage stamps, first issued in 1922 and still collected worldwide. Commemorative coins, fishing licenses, and the internet domain .ac, which is registered from here and which brings in money because it looks reassuringly like a British university address. The island was sighted by Portuguese ships around 1501 and named for the day it was found. For 3 centuries after that, nobody wanted it. What they did was leave goats so that future crews would find meat, and take turtles, which could be kept alive on their backs in a ship's hold for weeks. Ships came for the eggs and the birds and the turtles, and then left. In May 1725, a Dutch ship's officer named Leendert Hazenbosch was put ashore here alone, as a punishment. He had a tent, some seed, a cask of water, and books. He kept a diary. British sailors found the tent and the diary 6 months later. His body was never found. The diary was translated and published in London the following year, and it sold, and there is no way now to separate what he wrote from what a publisher wanted to sell. Permanent settlement began in October 1815, and the reason was Napoleon. With him imprisoned on St. Helena, the Admiralty took Ascension so that nobody could use it as a base for a rescue. The Royal Navy did not administer it as a colony. It commissioned it as a ship, a stone frigate, HMS Ascension, rated a sloop of war of the smaller class. And for 107 years, the island was run under naval discipline by men serving a posting. From here, the West Africa Squadron worked the slave trade. Royal Navy vessels intercepted slaving ships and brought them in, and the people found aboard them were landed on Ascension and St. Helena. Many were already sick. A cove on the north coast, screened from Georgetown by a ridge, was used to put ashore the fever cases from those ships and from the crews who boarded them, so that the illness would not reach the settlement. There are graves there still, in the black rock above the sand, with the dates cut into them. The cove is called Comfortless Cove, and that is the name on the map. Naval rule ended in 1922, when the island was handed to a cable company, which then ran it, school, hospital, wages, housing, until 1964. In 1982, it became the staging post for the British task force sailing to the Falklands, and for a few weeks, the airfield was among the busiest anywhere. Not one of those chapters was about the island. Every one of them was about the island being on the way to somewhere else. That inheritance is the shape of the present. Because the island exists to be useful, everyone on it is here on terms, and the terms have never been made permanent. The residents got an elected council in 2002. In January 2007, 6 of its 7 members resigned together, stating that they were being used to give the appearance of a democracy that did not exist. The dispute was about taxation, development, and whether people who had spent their working lives here would ever be permitted to own the houses they lived in. A general election was called, and only 2 candidates came forward. It was abandoned, and the council was suspended for a year. Councils have been elected since. In July 2025, there were 546 people on the electoral roll. 8 candidates stood for 7 seats, and 207 people voted. In 2019, a committee of the UK Parliament recommended that Ascension be recognised as an overseas territory in its own right. The recommendation has not been acted on, so the arithmetic that governs a life here has not changed. Work and you may stay. Stop working and you go to St. Helena or to Britain or wherever the passport says. Retire here and you cannot. Be buried here and your family will not be living nearby. People have raised children on this island, buried parents on St. Helena, run its shop, taught in its school, sat on its council, and will still, at the end, be driven out to the airfield with a suitcase. The turtles come back. That is not a sentiment, it is a tracked fact. The females that nest on Long Beach feed off the coast of Brazil and swim more than 2,000 kilometers of open ocean to lay their eggs on the specific beach where they hatched and then swim back. The terns come back every 9.5 months. The land crabs come down the mountain and go up it again. Nothing here holds anything permanently. The rock is young, the soil is imported, the forest was posted from London, the water is manufactured every morning, and the people are on contracts. And yet the school opens, the council sits, the shop puts out what came off the ship, and someone walks down to Long Beach before work to see what the night left in the sand. Ask people why they stay, and the answers are ordinary. The quiet, knowing everyone, the fact that a child can walk anywhere, that the sea is 4 minutes away. Belonging is not a document here. It is what a person does with their mornings, for as long as they are allowed to have them. If you'd like to keep traveling to places like this, subscribe. There's a new one every week.